my God! You won't believe what just happened in Ruidoso, New Mexico. A flash flood so sudden, so powerful, it erased an entire house in seconds. This isn't a story. This is real life, and every second counts. Stick with me, because the next few minutes will reveal what caused this disaster, who's been affected, and how you can help. Don't go anywhere. Before dawn, the sky over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains turned black, not with night, but with something heavier, ominous. Alive dark clouds rolled in low and fast, swallowing the peaks in silence. The early wind had a weight, too, it thick, strange, charged. And then, without hesitation, the first drops fell. What began as a storm became a catastrophe in minutes. A sudden downpour slammed the forested slopes, sending torrents of rain into the scarred earth below. Still fragile from recent wildfires, the ground didn't absorb the water, it rejected it. And then, it gave way. Within moments, a wall of water roared down Ruidoso Canyon. This wasn't a slow flood creeping in. This was violent, a churning avalanche of mud, broken trees, and runoff, tearing down the mountain like it had a mind of its own. It smashed through gullies, it ripped past ridgelines, it gathered speed with every foot of elevation it lost, and it was headed straight for town. No warning. No time, sirens hadn't started yet. Most families were still asleep. By the time people noticed the sound, it was already too late. Windows shook, roads vanished, backyard fences disappeared. This wasn't just a rainstorm. This was nature at its most furious, its most unforgiving. The hardest hit neighborhoods, especially those surrounding the Hollywood area, were already wounded. Weeks earlier, wildfires had scorched the hills, leaving behind blackened tree trunks, ash-covered slopes, and a land that no longer breathed. There was no grass left to hold the soil, no roots to anchor the hillside, just brittle ground baked by fire and now being battered by rain, and that made it a perfect trap. When the storm hit, the land couldn't absorb a single drop. It was like pouring water onto concrete. Everything slid, everything ran, unless. Then 10 minutes, what started as steady rainfall became a roaring avalanche of runoff. Rainwater turned into rivers. Rivers turned into torrents. And it all came crashing down from the mountains like a tsunami. People described it as a sound they'd never forget, a low, thunderous roar, like an approaching train that never arrived, just swallowed everything in its path. Streets around the Hollywood area were transformed into violent, muddy rivers, dragging rocks, tree limbs, and even small vehicles with them. Backyard fences were ripped from the ground. Sidewalks cracked. Entire slopes gave way, unleashing mini mudslides between homes and through alleys. And with every second, the water grew faster, louder, more unforgiving. For residents still trying to recover from the fires, it felt like nature had returned to finish what had started. Homes that had survived the wildfire, some barely holding on, were now helpless. Walls blackened by smoke, windows still boarded from weeks earlier, now faced an entirely new threat. Not fire, but water. Relentless, violent water. Driveways disappeared first, then sidewalks, then entire roads. What was once a neighborhood became a riverbed in seconds. In one now viral piece of surveillance footage, the camera catches an ordinary, quiet street, rain falling hard, visibility low. Then suddenly, the image jolts. The screen shakes, and with a sound like an explosion, a roar of water, wood and debris, an entire ranch-style house lifts off its foundation. Not cracks, not tilts. It lifts, floats, then disappears, downstream, away like it was made of cardboard. There was no time to call 911. No time to warn neighbors. No time to grab anything. It happened too fast. Inside other homes nearby, families had seconds, just seconds, to grab their children, their pets, and whatever they could carry before the water burst through the back door or punched through a wall. What remained behind wasn't just debris, it was silence. The kind of silence that follows disaster. Heavy, deafening. Final. Emergency coexistence. It wasn't organized. It was survival. As the flood surged through Ruidoso, neighbors scrambled to help one another, yelling across dark, flooded streets, banging on doors, pulling people into trucks and onto rooftops. It was panic, but with heart. In the absence of official orders, the community became its own rescue crew. Cars stalled in 50-foot torrents, their engines cut out mid-turn. Some drivers abandoned their vehicles entirely, crawling out windows as water climbed over their hoods. Taillights flickered beneath the current like warning beacons, already too late. People waded through knee-high water, arms above their heads, carrying children, dogs, backpacks, whatever they could. Some screamed for help. Others moved in silence, shocked, soaked, and shaking. And in the background, no sirens, no alerts, just rain, just fear. The National Weather Service didn't issue an emergency warning until it was already too late. For many residents, phones stayed silent. There was no text, no loud tone, no voiceover telling them to evacuate. It wasn't until the water was already inside homes, already sweeping through intersections, that alerts began buzzing. And by then the damage had already begun. At the local dam, the river gauge told the truth too late. A spike from 6 feet to over 25 feet in just 30 minutes. One of the fastest, deadliest rises ever recorded in Ruidoso's history, only to a flood no one alive remembers. This wasn't just a natural disaster. It was a failure in timing. A system meant to protect that didn't act fast enough. That spike turned peaceful mountain streets into raging rapids. What used to be a quiet canyon where families camped, kids played, and neighbors walked dogs, now a violent river, churning with mud, broken trees, and pieces of homes. Campers woke up to chaos. Some were still inside their tents when the water came, not dripping through the roof, lifting them, moving them. Tents floated down the canyon like boats with no captain, their poles snapping, their stakes torn from the ground, sleeping bags soaked instantly. Flashlights swept in every direction as people screamed into the dark, unsure which way led to safety. At Inwood Trailer Park, everything vanished in seconds. A muddy wave crashed through the property, rolling over gravel lots, wrenching trailers from their anchors. Propane tanks floated like barrels. Metal siding twisted and peeled like foil. It wasn't a slow rise, it was a full-body impact. Families scrambled for anything: blankets, flashlights, phones, each other, from rooftops. They waved to passing rescue boats, some yelling, some silently raising their arms, hoping someone saw them in the downpour. Children huddled under overturned tables, trying to stay dry, trying to stay brave. Dogs barked from windows, cats clawed at walls. Horses at a nearby ranch tried to escape a fenced field already knee-deep in water. You could hear it in the voices. "Help us! Over here! She's inside, please! Is anyone coming back?" And in many cases, the answer was not yet. Rescue teams didn't wait. They launched before dawn. Firefighters, sheriff's deputies, swiftwater units, and off-duty volunteers from nearby counties. No one had to ask. They just moved. High-water vehicles rumbled down mud-choked streets, their tires slicing through debris-strewn water. Some roads were so torn apart that even those armored trucks stalled, forcing responders to continue on foot, wading chest-deep, tethered by rope, hauling life vests in one hand and hope in the other. Helicopters circled above, blades chopping, the air floodlights scanning rooftops and treetops, looking for movement. A hand, a flashlight, a bright shirt. Some carried water buckets for firefighting. Others were focused on spotting survivors in areas too dangerous to reach by ground. At one point, a pilot radioed in coordinates for a family, waving from a metal shed rooftop: a mother, a father, and 2 children wrapped in towels. Within minutes, a rescue boat was rerouted and sent upstream against the current. Back in town, shelters opened at lightning speed, in gymnasiums, church halls, school cafeterias. Anywhere with a roof and dry ground became a safe zone. Inside those shelters, neighbors greeted each other like survivors of war. Some sat in shock, others clung to strangers who'd become their rescuers just hours earlier. The smell of wet clothes and rain filled the air. But so did something else: determination. Volunteers poured in, arms full of whatever they could: carry blankets, dry clothes, portable chargers, diapers, meals, life jackets. Local restaurants donated food. Parents cooked for entire rooms of strangers. One teenager walked in with a guitar and started playing quietly in a corner, because survival wasn't enough. Now came the part where the town saved itself. We spoke to one survivor, who could barely finish her sentence. "I told my husband, 'That can't be rain,'" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Then I saw water lapping at my floorboards, and my heart froze. We grabbed our baby and shoved her into the current. It was waist deep on the driveway." She paused, eyes red, hands still shaking. They made it out, but their home didn't. By early afternoon, county officials confirmed the scope of the damage, and it was staggering. Multiple homes were completely destroyed, torn off their foundations and swept downstream. Dozens more were uninhabitable, soaked through, filled with mud, or structurally compromised beyond repair. There was no pattern. Gardeners, retirees, young families, first-time homeowners, entire blocks with different lives but the same ending. Some residents were lucky enough to wade out on their own, clutching pets, dragging bags, helping neighbors with injured ankles or oxygen tanks. Others had to be pulled from second-story windows by helicopter hoist, still in pajamas, still barefoot. A mother from Eagle Drive clutched a trash bag of diapers. A retiree from Silver Hills carried only a worn photo album. The official reports were cautiously optimistic, no confirmed fatalities yet, but behind the numbers, the tone was heavy. Search teams were still combing neighborhoods, still knocking on doors that hadn't answered, still marking locations where the water was too deep to search safely. And everyone knows, sometimes the worst news doesn't arrive right away, and the damage didn't stop at front doors. Roads buckled, their asphalt surfaces peeled like loose skin, leaving craters where traffic once flowed. Bridges twisted under pressure, some collapsing entirely, others leaning at impossible angles, closed indefinitely. Water lines burst underground, sending geysers into the air, cutting off drinking water to entire neighborhoods. Then came the darkness. Downed, power lines lay across roads like snakes, sparking in the wet pavement. Substations flooded, transformers failed, whole communities lost power, some for 24 hours, others still waiting in the dark, relying on candles, radios, and faith. Local businesses were hit hard. The beloved Mountain Diner, a place where locals gathered for pancakes and tourists posed for selfies, reported over $80,000 in losses. Refrigerators fried, inventory spoiled, walls collapsed. Staff showed up anyway, just to see if anything could be saved. 4th of July celebrations were canceled. No fireworks, no parades, no backyard cookouts, only silence. Campgrounds remained, underwater picnic tables submerged, tents shredded, trails washed away. Rangers posted warning signs, but no one dared approach. Bears had been spotted, disoriented, wading through new flood zones. But here's the truth, the crisis doesn't end just because the water recedes. The burn scars left behind by the wildfire are still raw. The ground is weak, fragile, dangerous. The U.S. Forest Service estimates that unless vegetation grows back quickly, even a light rain could trigger new floods. Or worse, mudslides. This isn't about recovery, it's about racing the clock. Local leaders are scrambling. They're stacking sandbags across vulnerable culverts. They're digging emergency ditches behind homes. They're deploying reforestation crews, planting grasses and trees before the next storm hits. They're consulting with engineers to build barriers and drainage channels. But it's a battle on all fronts against weather, erosion, time, and exhaustion. Because this isn't just cleanup, it's survival. What caused this? A perfect storm of conditions: wildfire-burned slopes, saturated soil from heavy monsoon rains, steep mountain terrain, and a stalled storm cell. Angry headlines call it nature's perfect attack, but the victims say it's more personal. It's their home. It's their memories. Now here's the call to action. Officials are asking for immediate help. If you're watching this, share this video, raise awareness, donate to local relief funds. The Rotary Club of Ruidoso and Red Cross are receiving supplies and monetary gifts. Consider volunteering if you have water rescue experience. And most important, stay informed. More storms are expected. Follow the NWS and local emergency channels. If you're in burn scar areas, stay on high ground. If water starts rising, don't wait. Move. This flash flood came without warning. No sirens, no time to prepare. Just roaring water, snapping wood, and a town thrown into chaos. A home on Cedar Creek Lane was standing at 4:07 a.m. By 4:10. It was gone, swept away in seconds. And yet, this is not the end of Ruidoso, because what the flood destroyed in seconds, this community will rebuild brick by brick, meal by meal, hand by helping hand. Neighbors opened their doors to strangers. Firefighters worked without rest. Volunteers showed up with trucks, blankets, chainsaws, and coffee. No one asked for thanks. No one asked who you voted for. Everyone just asked, what do you need? Yes, homes were swept away. Yes, lives have been upended, but not hope. Hope holds. The water may have taken roofs and roads, but it didn't take courage. It didn't take community. It didn't take the will to start again. Right now, lives are on hold. But the recovery begins the moment the water pulls back. Not just with bulldozers or building permits, but with kindness, with grit, and with the belief that Ruidoso doesn't break, it rebuilds. And it will. If you're following the story statewide, or live in New Mexico, hit subscribe so you don't miss updates. If you're outside the area, this is a reminder. Flash floods are fast and furious. You never know what's around the bend. Thank you for watching. We'll continue bringing real updates as the recovery unfolds. Please subscribe for more. And share this video, it might help save someone else's life.